We're suffocating the working class. The working class builds with their hands. They create things. They fix things. They cut lawns. They serve communities. They build houses. They manufacture on assembly lines. They pick food from the ground. Those are the people that need a growth economy. An environmentally restricted, overregulated environment turns toxic and it kills those people first. Welcome back, everybody. Mike Madrid here, flying solo on the Latino Vote podcast. It's going to be one of those episodes, so buckle up, or as my good friend Chuck Rocha says, screw your wig on tight. It's going to be a little bit of a ride, probably devolves into a rant, but it's that rant you all love to hear because you know you need to hear it. It's like tasting that terrible medicine that you know you're going to feel better with after you take a few gulps of it. Chuck is in Alaska with the Rocha boys doing some fishing up there. Probably going to wrestle some grizzly bears or do whatever it is Mexicans do up in the Arctic Circle. So I know he will be listening. Chuck will be kind to you the way that we always are. He's doing his last bit of rest and relaxation before digging into what's going to be an incredibly exciting midterm cycle. I, for my part, am geared up to be on the road quite a bit. Just so you know, I'm trying to get out to the Rio Grande Valley, trying to get out to Colorado, looking to get to the Central Valley of California, and then hit that race in Arizona to meet with some of the candidates in the top Latino contested races in congressional battleground districts. So I want to interview these candidates. I want to get their taste of their best Mexican food. Tells me a little bit about who they are. If you saw my conversation with Bobby Polito, you know how passionate it gets, those differences get. But it says something about cultura. It says something about who we are. More importantly, it says something about who we are, where we are from. And those are the ways that I want to present these stories, these interviews, to get to the heart of who these candidates are, regardless of which side of the aisle. Obviously, the most contested races right now tends to be Democrats challenging. But we're going to be looking at a much broader map than that. And Chuck, ironically, will be doing a little bit more on the numbers because he's going to be more eyeballs deep in these races in terms of what the math means. And that's obviously important. You all know I've spent my entire career focusing on the math, focusing on the numbers, eating numbers for breakfast. That's what I do. That's what I love. In fact, I'm going to share some polling data I just came out of the field with. So breaking news, we're going to be doing some polling of California Latino voters in just a little bit. But I also believe that in a year like this, where I have seen the fundamentals as strong as they have been, where I have been as bullish on Democratic candidates as I have ever been for any party out of power, I'm not too sure that the numbers are going to tell us the whole story. And I'm really fascinated in learning more about who it is these candidates are going to be that are going to be defining the Latino narrative going forward. What do you mean by that, Mike? Well, let me tell you what Mike means by that. You're going to have candidates that are going to win very commandingly, like Javier Becerra, governor of California, who's going to have a very definitive central role in defining what Latino politics means going forward, heading into the 2028 election cycle, facing challenges in the Democratic Party as they struggle to figure out who they are, and probably even greater struggles in the Republican Party in the post-Trump era. California's governor is going to have a huge stake in that. But what about the Rio Grande Valley as it looks likely to bounce back? And if it does, what does that do to the narrative? And what are the differences going to be between a Bobby Polito or even a James Tallarico if he wins in the great Rio Grande Valley with a narrative that doesn't look like California's? What does it mean in Miami and South Florida if some of those congressional districts break away from Republicans that have been in GOP Cuban hands for a very, very long time? Those are the questions I want to get to. Who are the emerging stars, these new members of Congress, these new governors, new senators who are defining what the Latino narrative is going to be? Because that, I think, is what is really, that's what speaks to me at this moment. And I'm excited because as somebody who's been as granular as I have been for the past few decades, the opportunity to have the entree to sit down and talk with some of these characters emerging on the scene, young guys like Danny Villegas in California 22, kids 25 years old. I mean, bright rising stars, got an incredible future ahead of them. At the same week, I'm going to sit down with Ken Salazar, Secretary Salazar, about his new book, Borderlands, to talk a little bit about what that history has meant. So to be able to kind of wrap sort of the people who are the book writing age, like myself, and young people who are just breaking through, pushing the boundaries of what Latinidad means, not just from a policy perspective, but from a historical perspective, from a generational perspective, and absolutely from a geographical perspective. That's what gets me really excited about where things are heading, because we're hitting this point in our story where things are just getting so dynamic. I shared with some of you my Substack essay earlier about this new group, MAPA, that I'm really excited about, the Mexican American Policy Alliance, a group I spoke to in Mexico City. Saw many of you guys there, met the Speaker of the New Mexico House, sat down with the head of the Hispanic caucus in Texas, the oldest Hispanic caucus in the United States, which is the only bipartisan caucus, by the way, in the country also. Good for you, Texans. Hats off. All of these folks meeting together. It was fascinating to see so many leaders of the respective Latino and Hispanic caucuses in the United States convening with their counterparts and colleagues in the Mexican Congress and Mexican legislatures, meeting with Mexican leaders of the federal government in Mexico City, talking about not just the cross-party, cross-national alliances that are being built based off of our common Latino identity, but this incredible focus on the economy and trade, which I think is going to be so central to really making a cohesive Latino bloc, if it exists, possible. Remember, my theory of the case has always been we are a voting bloc, but we are a working class voting bloc. We are a blue collar working class, largely voting group. We are the largest group of non-college educated voters in the country, the fastest growing group of the blue collar working class, but also the fastest group of growing voters on the voter rolls. And the most defining characteristic, in my estimation, is not whether we are from the Dominican Republic or from the Cuban island or the Cuban diaspora or from Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican island or from Mexico, where the commonality is our blue collar work ethic, a working class party where Republicans have been making steady gains, not just with white folks, but with working class people of all races, of all nationalities. And that's coming to pass, not because Latino voters are becoming more Republican. I've been saying forever that they're not, but because Latinos are becoming less partisan. And as Latinos become less partisan, it changes the way our democracy is practiced. That was the whole thesis of my book when I wrote The Latino Century, is we are on the cusp of seeing some really profound changes in the Latino vote. We saw it in 2024 with this massive rightward shift. We're seeing it again, saw it again in 2025 with this equally historic leftward shift back away from the Republicans. And it's going to get even bigger and more pronounced as we head into the 2026 midterms. And to that point, I wrote a piece, we'll put a link here on the Sacramento Bee, which I think really draws the point of all of this home. And that is what probably put Javier Becerra over the top in this primary in California, the largest Latino state in the union by a wide measure, was independent Latino voters, nonpartisan voters, Latinos who are not affiliated with either the Republican or the Democratic Party, making a difference and putting Javier Becerra in the top spot. These 5 million voters, independent voters, over a third of which are Latinos, would not be able to vote in a closed primary. We had a record high turnout in California. More voters voted in the California primary than in any primary in our 150-year state history, driven largely by an explosion of Latino and independent voters, because that voter group is increasingly the same group. As Latinos become less partisan, less Republican, less Democrat, more of a swing gettable voter, more of a persuasive voter that is open to the ideas of both parties and rejecting the bad policies of both parties, we're starting to see this affect the way the parties are behaving. And the first reaction isn't a good one. In California, the reaction by the Republican and Democratic Party, the only thing that they can agree on is trying to close the primary to stop Latino voters, to stop this explosion of Latino independent voters from voting. A form of, let's call it what it is, that is voter suppression. You want to talk about voter ID being voter suppression? Not even close. You can't suppress 5 million voters with voter ID. You might be able to do a handful of voters on the margin. This is 5 million registered no party preference voters, unaffiliated voters by decision, by choice, who have rights to vote by the nature of their being citizens of the United States of America. You should not have your rights granted only when you join a political party. That's being forced to play a game you don't want to be a part of. We've got to stop this mentality. Why? I'll give you an exactly perfect, good understanding of why. Let's take a look at New York, where Congressman Espaillat, the head of the Hispanic caucus, was unseated in a primary, and this whole rise of the DSA. And I'm not making a judgment call on the ideology of the DSA, but what I am going to do is make an observation, which I think is a good one that no one's talking enough about, is the fact that the DSA candidates do really, really well in closed primaries, where there's very few voters. New York had a 9% turnout. 9. Didn't even break double digits. 9% turnout, and you see all of these members of Congress being tossed out. Why? Because only the smallest elements of the extreme decide to show up and vote. One, and two, you've got fully 1/3 of Latino Democrats in New York State. Let me say this again. I'm going to say it slower for those of you listening in the back or driving your car to work or sitting in your cube deciding, hey, I'm going to listen to Mike Madrid go on this rant, because this is a good one. This is really important. All of the polling coming out of New York before their primary, where everybody was tossed out, showed Democrats, Latino Democrats, okay? Latinos registered as Democrats in New York, and I've said it 4 times, say 1/3 of them are saying that they don't like the party, but they don't have a choice but to join one in order to vote. 1/3 of Latino Democrats in New York don't claim to be Democrats. It's crazy that we are forcing Latinos to make a choice in which party they want to be in when we are the fastest growing group of unaffiliated voters. That's madness. And the only alternative is what? We'll close the primary so you can't vote at all? The political parties have more rights than voters have rights? Where's the outrage on that? You want to get pissed about voter ID? Get pissed about voter ID. That's legitimate. But don't not get pissed about closing primaries and the party's trying to force candidates out. Let's not forget the California Democratic Party trying to push Javier Becerra out of the primary before he wins. That happened, folks, just a few months ago. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get the 2 Latino candidates and female candidates out of the race. Where's the outrage there? The only reason you're not outraged by that behavior is because you're more of a partisan than you are an advocate for your community. That's the only answer. If you're so focused on being a Democrat and trying to suggest that being a Democrat is somehow emblematic of being Latino, you're freaking nuts. You're crazy. Nobody believes you. And in fact, not even your family believes you, because when you go home on Sunday to have dinner with your primos and primas, some of whom are clearly MAGA, and you're saying these people are crazy, they're not the crazy. You're the crazy. They're reacting reasonably in an irrational system where somehow, if you're so consumed and obsessed about politics, especially Latino politics, that you're listening to Mike Madrid on the Latino Vote podcast, that you think that that's normal behavior. I love you for it. Chuck and I both love you for it. Our sponsors love you for it. If we were having any sponsors, we haven't pursued any, but if you got any leads, give them to us. The point here, though, is that if you think that a party best reflects your community values, you've got it turned around. Our voters understand this. That's why we're the only voter group that is a swing voter group. We have not been completely compromised by the 2-party system yet that's selling us this bullshit. Black voters don't shift more than a small single digit in percentage rate. Black voters aren't leaving the Democratic Party no matter what by less than 3, 4, 5% or more than 3, 4, 5%. The same thing with white working class voters. They don't move. They're staying with Trump regardless. They don't care how bad the war gets, how bad the economy gets. They don't care about pandemics. They're not going to vote for the Democrats. That's how broken the system is. But you know who's fixing it? Latinos, our people. And you've got to ask yourself a question as a political operative, as an elected official, as a political consultant, as an activist or academic who watches this and observes this. Why aren't we celebrating the fact that we are and have become essentially a 50-50 vote as a point of pride? Hey, look, I hate the Trump stuff more than anybody. Take a backseat to nobody on that. You all know that. You all know my history. You know what I fought for. I've fought against this Trump nightmare more than every other anti-Trumper on this podcast combined. Okay? Take a backseat to nobody. But I'm not going to sit here and justify their behavior is somehow irrational when I've watched the failures of the Democratic Party lead to worsening schools, collapses in our inner cities, the lack of upward mobility, the complete failure on affordability, housing, groceries, energy, gas, healthcare. And if your response is to blame the Republicans, shame on you. Shame on you. Because you've just become an apparatchik of the two-party system. If you think that getting louder and calling out the Republicans louder because you're a Democrat or berating Democrats louder because you're a Republican is fixing the system and helping your community, man, you lost the plot. You lost the plot a long time ago. You're not part of helping the system. You're just a brick in the wall that's dividing the community more and more and more. And I'm proud of our people for rejecting the idea that any one party speaks for us. Now, I'm equally proud that they're rejecting the party in power now. But if you don't see that as clear a writing on the wall as what it is and what is being said from the top of the mountains, screaming at the top of their lungs that they've had it with all of y'all, with both sides of this scam, I don't know what it is. And I'm going to use this as a segue to show you just how much this is playing out in the real world with a poll that I just came out of the field with just yesterday. A poll I did with David Binder. If you don't know the name David Binder, I talk about him a lot on the show. He is by far the most blue chip, top shelf Democratic pollster in California. There's some other good ones, a couple of bad ones. You've heard me talk about those too. Binder was Kamala Harris's pollster nationally. Top shelf pollster. He's the only Democrat that I have decided to work with on Latino polling to give us some better insight into what is going on. And I asked him to look at California voters, California Latino voters for this California Latino Working Class Project that I'm a part of. We'll put a link to the Latino Working Class Project down there too, because I'm going to be doing a lot of polling, not just this election cycle, although that's true. I'm going to be using the results of this poll to set up some focus group work with these independent voters that put Javier Becerra over the top and made such a big difference in the primary. These voters that are getting screened out of places like New York and closed primaries, but also going forward to get a real understanding of what affordability actually means, what cost of living actually means. Not just buzzwords, not just phrases, not just talking points. I'm going to be speaking very specifically the way that I have for years, the way that you guys have, whether you like what I'm saying or not, have got to admit the dude's right about 99% of his stuff. And if I'm wrong, push back and tell me I'm wrong. But somebody was saying Trump is likely to get elected with a historic share of the Latino vote if he gets elected. Mike Madrid was saying these voters are not new Republicans. This isn't a new coalition. They're just as likely to bounce right back. Nobody was saying this, guys. Nobody was saying that Latino Republicans would win in the Coachella Valley or the Inland Empire of California, except for one person. Nobody was saying that this is a de-alignment, not a realignment. Nobody was saying it except for one person. And I'm not here trying to pat myself on the back, although maybe a little bit, because I'm not the type of person that wants to say I told you so, which we all know is not true. I love saying I told you so. But it's so obvious. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. And I'm going to make it even more obvious to you as I go through this poll right here. Okay? So with David Binder, we took a look just in the past few days, just came out of the field. This stuff is fresh, man, hot, like hot tortillas off the comal. These things are warm, right? These numbers are warm. I want to give you, in California, working class Latino voters, here's the numbers. I'm going to just go over some top lines. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president? 26% approve, 70% disapprove. These are in the low historic range I have been seeing in California since Bob Dole, okay, 1996. Whatever gains Trump may have gotten, they're gone. Now, this doesn't mean they're gone forever. This is the mistake that the Democrats are going to make. It's the same mistake that Republicans just made in the Rio Grande Valley with their dummy mander. Okay? It's the same exact mistake. They see a poll, the Democrats go, see, they figured it out. They came back home. The exact same thing Republicans did in 2025, the exact same mistake that Democrats were making in 2024. They don't understand these voters, neither side. If you think I'm talking about your side, I am. Your side doesn't understand where our community is at. Otherwise, they would be making the adjustments, and they're not. The Democrats, by the way, in this poll are going to look very, very good because they are doing very good. I've been saying that too. I've been more bullish on Democrats' prospects than even Chuck. I've been saying the Democrats are going to get the Senate since January. Okay, I'm still committed to that idea. Could it change? Yes. But right now, I'm still saying that when everyone's saying, Madrid, you're nuts. I was saying that the Democrats are probably going to get in the mid-20s seats when everyone else saying, oh, maybe a dozen. Nancy Pelosi took the stage in California yesterday saying she thinks they could get 30 seats. It's getting easier to be a little bit more optimistic now because all the trend line numbers were showing us heading in this direction. Mike Madrid was the only one saying during the Prop 50 campaign, one, not only is Prop 50 a bad idea, but two, perhaps most importantly, we could be looking at a generic ballot of Democrats plus 11%. Guess where the generic ballot is sitting at today? Plus 11%. Everybody said I was nuts. Maybe it'll get to 4. Maybe it'll get to 5. I was saying 11. It's sitting at 11. A Democratic plus 11 environment means you would pick up the House without Prop 50, without cheating to change the rules, without reconfiguring and going to the gutter lower than the Republicans. And if you think that that's somehow virtuous, man, I don't know what kind of prescription you need to get you off of the totalitarian drugs you've been taking because it's bad for the country. It's bad for our community. It's bad for democracy. Don't tell me you're pro-democracy if you're out there cheating to change the rules through gerrymandering. That's nonsensical, but I digress. Let's go talk now about Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton, the Republican nominee. Great numbers for Javier Becerra. Proud to see this. 72% support for Javier Becerra, 24% for Steve Hilton, the Republican. Matches almost baseline exactly. As I said, Donald Trump's approval numbers, 26% disapprove. Steve Hilton, 24% support level. Almost identical. Disapprove of Donald Trump, 72%. Javier Becerra, 72% support levels. Identical numbers, exact numbers. Strict partisan range. Interesting factoid here. Let's look at Gavin Newsom. Do you approve of Gavin Newsom or do you disapprove somewhat or strongly? 61% approve, 35% disapprove. Newsom's, these are all Latinos, by the way. Remember, this is just an all Latino poll in California. Gavin's numbers are not as strong as Becerra's. Well, that might be obvious, you say, because he's Latino. No, I don't subscribe to that at all. I subscribe to the fact that Javier Becerra is coming in with a clean slate, 100%, but that also means that he might have some of the drag of the bad economy that's really starting to settle in. And here's where the poll starts to get really interesting. Now, I started this baseline poll. Baseline means we started 3 years ago, or I should say 2 years ago, November 2024, a little less than 2 years ago, right after the massive rightward shift. Mike Madrid is the only one going out and polling Latino voters to ask what just happened, right? Everybody polls before the election. Madrid goes out there like Benjamin Franklin with a key in a lightning storm trying to catch lightning and determine what the hell was going on and assess and ask the question of these voters that just shifted historically right. Why did you do that? What is going on? And what they were saying by pretty strong numbers is the economy, the economy, the economy. Again, that was Mike Madrid saying that when everybody else was saying it's immigration, it's immigration, it's immigration. They're all going to take credit for it now. Every one of these Democratic pollsters and consultants are all denying that they were saying it's immigration, when Mike Madrid is the only one saying it was the economy. Now they're all saying, I've been saying this for years, it's the economy, it's the economy. Yeah, bullshit. Show me one of them. It's always been about the economy. Probably always will be, by the way. And that is more true now than ever. This polling has ICE raids and Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the lowest range of 10 questions answered. Let me say that again. The lowest range of 10 questions answered. Actually, that's not true. There's one that's lower. Climate change is lower than ICE and Immigration and Customs Enforcement and immigration. ICE is climate change is the only thing polling worse than those changes needed there. So if you think, and if you're a consultant, or if you are in politics and think you're a consultant, the consultants don't know what the hell they're talking about, and you should be listening to these journalists and academic pollsters who don't know how to do races for a living, talking about immigration as somehow an issue that's going to get you back into contention with the Democratic voters and the voters that you just lost, these independent voters. You're huffing something, man. You're wrong. You're dead wrong. Let me tell you what is working. The cost of living, top issue. Corruption and fraud in government, second biggest issue. And by the way, I have no doubt that the Trump corruption is leading this into new highs, but the numbers of corruption in California state government are off the charts. Latinos get it. They're seeing it. They've had it. They don't see government as serving the people anymore because, let's be honest with ourselves, it's not. Another article today in the LA Times showing a homeless nonprofit CEO making $1.6 million a year, living in Hawaii, overseeing homeless services in Los Angeles, paying herself $800,000 a year, 40 years of accrued vacation time, getting payouts on while people are living miserably in the streets. This is what people see every day in Los Angeles and California. But let me keep going. Cost of housing, 90. Second, the cost of healthcare, fourth. So the top four issues: cost of living, corruption and fraud in government, cost of housing, cost of healthcare. Then it's crime and public safety. Then jobs. Then it gets to immigration, 7. ICE, 8. I'm sorry, homelessness was up top. Homelessness was higher than immigration and ICE. So look, I'm gonna try to post this part of the slide too down below. I am asking Diego a lot to post a lot of this stuff. This is David Binder. This is the top pollster, top tier, top shelf Democratic pollster, working with Mike Madrid, Republican, who's been working on Latino issues for 35, 40 years. You can come at the credibility all you want. You don't like the results, that's fine. But the Democratic Party is so far removed from fixing these problems in a real meaningful way. And if you don't think that, if you think it's just me, with partisan blather, I'm going to get to the question set about how Latinos feel about the state of California addressing these. Here's the numbers. Here's the question I asked these Latino voters. By the way, before I get to that trust in government question, I want to walk through this other question set real quickly. The number one cost driver, this is the first time I've seen this in a poll, is now the price of gas. Well, of course, it's California, you say. Of course, it's the war in Iran, you say. It's Donald Trump's fault. Yeah, both true. But if you think Latinos aren't smart enough to figure out that it's our own policies in California that have gotten to this predicament, boy, you're going to need to sit up here because it is absolutely a function of what our state is doing, and Latinos see it. And by the way, what is the number one demographic that is impacted by the price of gas? Latino men under 30. We are dramatically, disproportionately the demographic impacted by this. Why? These are the working class guys, construction workers, driving a truck, not an electric vehicle, a gas-powered truck, landscaping services, hauling services, building things, creating things. These are the guys driving as Senator Gallego calls, a big-ass truck. These are the ones who are affected by it. Maybe they should be driving a Prius. You sell them that. You sell them that. The Chevy Volt. You convince Latinos that they shouldn't be driving a big-ass truck. They should be driving a Chevy Volt. I'm sure Senator Gallego's office would be glad to hear from you on your ideas on how to sell them that. Hell, I would be really fascinated to sit down to hear somebody sell me and pitch me on how you can convince Latino men, working class people, to be driving a Chevy Volt instead of their trucks. Here's the question. Compared to other states, do you think the price of gas in California is much more expensive, somewhat more expensive, about the same, somewhat less expensive, much less expensive? 93%, 93% say much more or somewhat expensive in California, okay? Maybe that's not surprising because it's absolutely true. So the follow-up question is, do you approve or disapprove of the way that government in California is addressing the price of gas? 21% approve, strongly or somewhat. 70% somewhat disapprove or strongly disapprove. 70%. These are the same numbers as Becerra numbers. Disapprove in the reverse. These are Latino, working class Latinos disproportionately impacted by the price of gas, blaming the state of California for its addressing the way it's addressing the price of gas. This is really clear, guys. This isn't like an interpretation by the pollster or some fungible analysis. There's a word for you, Chuck, while you're sitting out there in the Klondike chasing grizzly bears. Fungible. Google it. Look it up. These are not fungible numbers. These are black and white, as clear as day, easy to understand. No pollster can draw any other conclusion. So let's continue. Do you approve or disapprove of the way the state government in California is addressing the economy, including jobs and the prices we pay for everything? 67% disapprove. 29% approve. Okay, your numbers are getting better. Yeah, you're losing 70-30. This is a 2/3 supermajority Democrats in California. It's not working. What you're doing is not working, Democrats. Okay? Generally speaking, next question. Generally speaking, do you think that California state government policies make the prices we pay for everything higher or lower? 82% say much or higher or somewhat higher, compared to 3% who say lower. 82% much higher, 3% lower. Let me read the question again for those of you in the back. Do you think that California state government policies make the prices we pay for everything higher or lower? 82% say higher. They directly blame the state of California because they should, because it's their fault, because it's the fault of the policies of the supermajority. This isn't a partisan, criticism. It's common sense. It's obvious. I don't care how partisan you are right now. I don't care if you're wearing your, Zoran Mamdani t-shirt and drinking your chai latte right now. I don't care. These numbers are obvious. They're sinful. There's that word again. They're shameful. For a party that claims to be a working class party to be this far out of touch is nuts. You don't see things that are 82% to 3. You don't see that in politics today. But Latinos are saying it. They're blaming the state of California for the price problem. So the next one, 39, compared to other states, is the price of housing in California more expensive, less expensive? 96% say more expensive. Less expensive? 1%. 96%, 1%. I didn't even know that these were statistically possible. Okay? So don't tell me that it's misinformation or people don't understand or it's the right wing infiltrating WhatsApp groups from Latin America and misinformation and lying to our voters because our people aren't smart enough to understand that what's causing higher prices is not us. It's not our party. It's not what we're doing. Bullshit. Our people know what's going on. No somos pendejos. We're not stupid. Okay? That's the problem. The reason why Democrats are doing so well and are going to do well in the midterms is not because of the Democrats. It's because the Republicans are even bigger idiots. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it's exactly what I said heading into the last election. These people are not becoming more Republican. And the Republicans are making a mistake believing that. Are they stupid enough to believe it? 100% they are. Did they believe it? 100% they did. How much did they believe it? Enough to bet their majority on a dummy mander in Texas by carving out seats that they thought were Republican, Starr County, Beeville, Texas, these small places where Bobby Polito is going to go on a tear and win this race, his congressional district down there, and pick up a gerrymandered, safe Republican seat for the exact same reason that the Democrats are going to win the voters in 2026 is the same reason that they lost them in 2024, and why they're probably not going to learn the lesson. Because they're not going to do the hard work, guys. Let's be honest about it. If you're a Democrat and you think the Democratic Party is going to finally get religion and do the hard work and start peeling back all of the onerous regulation that is suffocating working people, you're crazy. You know how crazy you are? You're as crazy as the Republicans who voted for MAGA, thinking that they would see the politics and the writing on the wall and adjust to do immigration reform in order to build a permanent majority, that they would get over their nativist racist sensibilities and somehow see the light. There's no more chance that Stephen Miller is going to bend on immigration reform than the Sierra Club is going to bend on CEQA. It's the same people. It's just some are more educated and have more affluent and same money. They don't give a shit about how it affects Latino working class people. Either side. Yeah, you heard it here first. Either side. They don't care. And it's not Mike Madrid saying it alone anymore. Used to be. Now it's our people quantifiably saying it through the polling. The only question is, when do you as an advocate start saying it's okay to criticize my own party, to allow our people to build, to swing hammers, as Javier Becerra says, and afford the homes that they are actually building? Why is it us that has to drive from the Central Valley to go blow leaves before the crack of dawn in the Silicon Valley, to be the servant class for a community that will give themselves tax credits for electric vehicles and solar panels, but not afford to give it to us to get off of fossil fuel engines or even own or buy a house in communities where we serve? That's the California we created. And again, I'm not trying to, I know I always devolve into ranting on California, but it's because so many Latinos here. This is where the Latino experience is happening, guys, by the way. Yes, it's happening all over the country. Yes, that's why I'm going to be on a plane. Yes, that's why I'm going to be packing my suitcase. Yes, that's why I'm going to be going with a film crew to meet these candidates where they're at. But you cannot solve the Latino economic problem nationally without solving the Latino economic problem in California. And Californians don't get it. That's what I learned at this MAPA convention in Mexico City, sitting down with Latino caucus leaders, Hispanic caucus leaders from all over the country. Fascinating. All they wanted to talk about was the economy and trade. You go to California, all they want to talk about is social issues, cultural issues, immigration issues. Look, those issues are important. And again, I hate having to qualify this because you guys know me by now. I don't take a backseat to anybody in the immigration issues. I just don't. But damn it, use your heads. The same immigrants you're talking about, they want a good, healthy economy on both sides of the border, by the way. The Mexicans, the real Mexicans, the Mexicans from Mexico Mexicans wanted to talk about trade. They don't want to talk about immigration. They don't want to talk about immigration. They want to talk about trade. They want to talk about the economy. They want to talk about lifting people up. It's this activist class fed by these academic pollsters who have no bearing in reality, talking about this bullshit that isn't even a top 5, certainly not a top 5, barely top 10 issues. And by the way, I didn't go through this, but where immigration and ICE is emergent as an issue, fully a third of our people are saying that because they want more border restrictions. They're happy with what's going on. They want more of it. So if you take those thirds out, it drops below the top 10 issues, both ICE raid crackdowns and immigration reform. Doesn't mean it's not an important issue. God, I hate to qualify it yet again. Here it is, but that's what we need to do. So look, these numbers are jaw-dropping. They're overwhelming. Let me talk about how people view the parties. And let me drive home the immigration piece one more time. I also asked the question, all else being equal, which of the following candidates would you be more likely to vote for? A candidate who prioritizes lowering prices for essential things that families need, or a candidate who prioritizes reforming the immigration system? Guess what? 54% said a candidate who prioritizes lowering prices for essential things that families need. 9% said a candidate who prioritizes reforming the immigration system. 54-9. Now, 22% said they want to prioritize reforming ICE and protecting the communities from ICE raids. But let's add both of those up. You get to 31. You're still 23 points below the economy. You take the two top polling immigration issues, combine them, they're still 23 points behind the economy. I don't know how to make this any clearer. And by the way, we just elected in California a new member of the Latino caucus, Juan Carrillo from Lancaster. He's a great guy, gets economic development, worked in city government to create a sustainable economy in his part of the state, the high desert, northern part of LA County. Labor weighed in to try to get a labor, toady. There's the word. I'll say it because I'm not anti-labor. I'm anti concentrated power and thinking that only labor speaks for Latinos. That's just complete horseshit. But by the way, Latinos are very positive on labor. That doesn't mean that's the only voice that's out there. I mean, I don't know how clear that can get. Labor needs to be strong. It needs to have a strong voice. It can't be the only voice. It shouldn't even be the dominant voice. Okay? It needs to be there. More of our people need to be organized in labor. I'm saying that as a Republican. I don't have any problem with that. What I do have a problem is with you dominating everything and shutting out the voices of working class people. Because if you think only unions speak for working class people, you're crazy. You're an ideologue. You're an extremist. You're a nut job. You're crazy, and you're dead wrong. And the facts and the data prove that out. So enough ranting about California. It's 42 minutes. If you're still with me, I want you to comment and ask questions. I want you to remind people that this is an important conversation to have. I want you to remind Chuck especially, because Chuck is going to be like, "Ooh boy, Madrid's let Madrid out of the kennel again. It's like a rabid dog." But this is that straight medicine that I think is easier for me to talk about because I'm not as committed to the party system as most people are. And a lot of people say I'm anti-party, and I think that's probably becoming more and more true. As I've learned, as one of the few people that has worked in this country at the highest levels of campaigns on both sides of the aisle, I'm going to tell you again and again and again that neither party understands our community. Neither party is genuinely trying to understand it. They're trying to force our voters as square pegs into the round holes of their own party ideologies. And it's not working. It's why they're both failing. And I want you to do this. I had a conversation with a lot of Latino legislators last weekend saying, when is the party going to get it? These are Democrats, by the way, agreeing with me. And my answer was, they're not going to get it. You have to get it. You have to be that change. And when you're going to be a Latino governor, son of immigrants, from a working class family in California, when the speaker is a working class son of immigrants, when the pro tem is the daughter of working class Latino immigrants, when Alex Padilla, our U.S. Senator, is the son of Latino working class immigrants, we are the system. We have to be that change. We have to stop being afraid of the interest groups that dominate the Democratic Party. Like, at what point, how much suffering does our community have to go through? How much do we disproportionately have to have kids who can't read, who aren't capable of being employed in the high-tech industries that we are creating here, who can't afford a home here, who can't afford healthcare, who are disproportionately impacted by energy, who aren't being educated, who are increasingly part of this prison pipeline that we're building? That's our failure now. It's not the system's failure. It's not the Democratic Party's failure. It's our failure because we're not standing up and choosing anything different than what we've always done. And I know that 90% of the Democrats that I talk to at conferences and at workshops and the summits that we have, you all come up to me and say, I agree with you, but it's so challenging for you to think differently outside of what government program can we do to solve that? That's not the way working class people think. They don't have that luxury. Because the honest truth is, and this is not just Mike Madrid saying this, although I've been saying it for decades now and it's born true. Ezra Klein was saying this. Fareed Zakaria was saying this. The intellectuals and the thinkers in the Democratic Party are now saying this. There's not many Latinos saying it in the Democratic Party, which is shameful in its own right. You don't need more laws. You need less laws. There's something that the Republicans are right about. We have regulated ourselves into a cul-de-sac where we can't grow our way out of it because we have tied a noose around our ankles and we can't move forward anymore. We're suffocating the working class. The working class builds with their hands. They create things. They fix things. They cut lawns. They serve communities. They build houses. They manufacture on assembly lines. They pick food from the ground. Those are the people that need a growth economy. An environmentally restricted, overregulated environment turns toxic and it kills those people first. The people who are the least impacted are the high-paid, highly educated, professional class who don't work with their back or with their hands. They're gonna survive. They're gonna thrive. You know why? With less housing, their equity goes up regardless. Their tenure at colleges and universities only makes them richer and more financially well off. The stock market continues to inflate on paper. These are the people that have 401ks, that invest in the stock market, that have real estate holdings. And when those are appreciating faster than the economy is suffocating for working class people, you know what happens? It makes the price of labor easier to have a servant class, to be your nanny, to be your barista, to be your gardener, to deliver your food through Instacart, to pick you up in your Uber. That's what's happening. We're allowing that. We're not just allowing that, we're encouraging that. And it is our people at the bottom. It's not just corporations that's a part of it. It's us through the policies that we've enabled. There's a simple solution to this. It's not difficult. It's the politics. Can we fix it? Yeah, we can. Will we fix it? Well, that's another question. Till next week, when I'm back with Chuck, make sure you kiss your mama if you still got her. I think that's what he says. Give her a call anyway. I've started calling my mom more regularly. I thank Chuck Rocha for that. I appreciate all of you. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. We need you as part of this discussion. We're going to be on the road a lot talking about midterms, getting back to numbers. But every once in a while, you're going to get that straight shot of mezcal just where you need it, coming from Mike Madrid, reminding you this isn't about Republicans or Democrats or who's in power. It's about fighting for our community. Be one of those voices. Be one of those champions. The fact that you listen to the show means you're at a place and focus of where you can make a difference. So start doing it. Give up on thinking that it's going to be somebody else who's going to do it, because guys, it ain't going to happen. It's going to be us, you and I, and Chuck and others like us together. Let's start working on it today. Talk to you next week.